The nature of fear and why you must face it differently. Have you ever felt fear arrive before you even understood what triggered it? It doesn't always roar in like thunder. Sometimes it tiptoes. A tight chest. A skipped heartbeat. A silent thought that begins with what if. What if I fail? What if they leave? What if this never changes? You try to rationalize it. You try to breathe it away. But it clings. Quietly. Persistently. That's the thing about fear, it doesn't knock. It just moves and rearranges your life if you let it. And then, there's its cousin, anxiety. Anxiety is fear's shadow. Less obvious but more pervasive. It paints your future in catastrophe. It hijacks your thoughts before you've even stepped into the day. It whispers not that something is wrong, but that something will go wrong. And if you're not careful, you start believing it. You let fear and anxiety set the tone of your decisions, your energy, your identity. And soon, you forget what peace felt like. But here's the truth the Stoics held close. Fear is not the enemy. Your reaction to it is. Fear is information. Anxiety is anticipation. What makes them destructive is our interpretation. Let that sink in. Because before you can beat fear, you must understand it. The Stoics didn't pretend fear didn't exist. They didn't chant mantras to wish it away. They looked it in the eye. They asked, what is this emotion trying to teach me? What part of this fear is within my control? What part of this anxiety is my mind rehearsing pain that hasn't even happened yet? Most people don't fear reality. They fear their imagination. And imagination, if entrained, becomes a weapon you turn on yourself. Marcus Aurelius, writing from the battlefield in the throne, said, if you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it, and this you have the power to revoke at any moment. The power to revoke. Think about that. You don't need to conquer the fear. You need to reclaim the authority to interpret it. Let me tell you a story. A young mother wakes every morning under a mountain of pressure. A recent divorce. Kids to raise. Bills that pile up. Loneliness that thickens after dark. To cope, she pours a glass of wine. Just one. Just to relax. But soon, it becomes two. Then three. Not because she's weak, but because she's trying to numb what she has been taught to face. And isn't that most of us? Trying to escape fear through distraction, substances, scrolling, overworking, anything but sitting in it long enough to understand it. But what if she did? What if instead of reaching for the bottle, she reached for a pen? What if she wrote down, what am I afraid of? What can I control? What is one act of courage I practice today? That act, tiny, unimpressive, quiet, might change everything. Because now, she's facing the storm with tools, not trauma. And the Stoics would applaud her not for being fearless, but for being willing. Willing to feel. Willing to ask. Willing to return to her own strength. Fear isn't there to stop you. It's there to introduce you to yourself. And anxiety? It's a false prophet. It predicts pain with no evidence. It offers certainty without truth. And the only way to disarm it? Expose it. Ask, what am I afraid of losing? If that happened, who would I become in response? What tools do I already have that I've forgotten? Because anxiety doesn't survive clarity. It thrives in chaos. So calm your breath. Calm your mind. And call its bluff. The Stoics taught us to prepare for the worst, not to live in dread but to reclaim perspective. They called it premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. Not to attract negativity, but to strengthen resilience. To remind yourself, even if this happens, I will not be destroyed. Even if I fall, I will rise differently. That's not morbid. That's middle armor. That's training your mind for life, not just for comfort. Now pause and ask, what am I running from that I've never tried to face with presence? Maybe it's a difficult conversation. Maybe it's a secret addiction. Maybe it's a part of yourself you abandoned just to be accepted. Whatever it is, it's not as powerful as your willingness to grow through it. Because growth doesn't come after the fear passes. It comes when you stop running. Fear teaches you where your edge is. Stoicism teaches you how to stand at that edge without jumping. And that edge? That's where life starts to open up. Not because it gets easier, but because you get stronger. Not because the storm calms, but because you learn to navigate. And that's what this first step is all about. Recognizing that the presence of fear doesn't mean you're broken. It means you're alive. In life, real life will always include uncertainty. But if you stop seeing fear as a wall and start seeing it as a doorway, you'll walk into a version of yourself you never thought existed. Calmer, clearer, wiser. And in that version, fear is no longer your master. It's your messenger. And your job is not to silence it. Your job is to listen, learn, and lead. The anatomy of anxiety from imagination to identity. Anxiety is not a flaw. It's not a glitch in your system. It's not a moral weakness. It's not something that makes you broken. It's something that makes you human. And yet, for many people, anxiety becomes more than a feeling. It becomes a lens, a way of interpreting the world, of anticipating pain, of bracing for impact. And slowly it becomes a personality. You don't just feel anxious. You become someone who expects danger before opportunity. Someone who prepares for rejection before speaking. Someone who breathes but never deeply. But the Stoic doesn't accept this as permanent. They look at anxiety the way a sculptor looks at a block of marble, not as a curse, but as material. Something that can be studied, understood, reshaped. And that process begins with a question. Where does anxiety actually live? Not in your job, not in your relationship, not even in the news. It lives in one place, your imagination. Because anxiety is always future minus based. It projects what might go wrong. It rehearses what has happened. It convinces your body to panic about ghosts your mind created. And if you're not conscious, your identity starts to revolve around these phantoms. But here's what Marcus Aurelius wrote nearly 2,000 years ago. Today, I escaped anxiety. Or no, I discarded it because it was within me, my own perceptions, not outside. Read that again. I discarded it because it was within me. That's not denial. That's ownership. Ownership of your inner world. Because until you recognize that your anxiety is being generated not by life, but by your thoughts, you will keep treating symptoms instead of the source. So let's break this down. Your anxiety has a pattern. It usually starts with a trigger. Small, subtle, sometimes even unconscious. An unread message. A social plan. A sound. A silence. That trigger sparks thought. What if something's wrong? What if I mess this up? What if they leave? Thought becomes feeling. Your breath shortens. Your heart rate increases. Your stomach tightens. And then feeling becomes identity. I'm anxious. I'm not okay. I'm broken. But stop. Slow down. Interrupt the chain. Because between thought and identity, there is a window. A moment to ask, is this real or imagined? Is this danger or discomfort? Is this the past playing out again, or is this something new? That moment, it's everything. It's where you start reclaiming power. Because when you catch the story, you can rewrite the script. Anxiety thrives on prediction. Stoicism thrives on presence. Epictetus said, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." Modern psychology agrees. Studies show the vast majority of things we worry about never come true. And yet our bodies still respond like the threat is here. Why? Because the body listens to belief, not truth. So the Stoic doesn't argue with the feeling. They question the belief underneath it. They ask, what evidence do I actually have? Have I survived something like this before? Even if this happens, will it destroy me or refine me? These questions don't eliminate anxiety instantly. They do something better. They create space. Space to breathe. Space to observe. Space to choose. And in that space, you begin separating you from it. You are not your anxiety. You are the awareness noticing it. That shift from identification to observation is the beginning of freedom. Because now, you don't have to fight the anxiety. You can walk beside it, like a nervous child. You don't scream at them. You say, I see you. I know you're scared. But we're still walking. That's courage. Not the absence of fear, but the refusal to be ruled by it. Here's a reframe: your anxiety isn't a threat. It's a signal. It's asking, where am I annihilate them? Where am I pretending? What truth am I avoiding? Sometimes anxiety is not fear of failure, it's fear of success. Because success means exposure. It means visibility. It means being seen, and that can feel terrifying when you're still healing shame. Other times, anxiety isn't irrational. It's your body remembering a moment when you weren't safe. But even then, the Stoic response is not to shame the body. It's to lead it. With breath, with rhythm, with steady and body presence. Because fear will rise. But the body can be trained to know. This moment is new. This version of me is wiser. I choose how to meet this. You can't think your way out of anxiety. But you can breathe your way through it. Practice this. Right now, inhale for 4 seconds. Hold for 2. Exhale for 6. Again. Let your breath lead your nervous system back to truth. Then ask, what's one thing I'm grateful for in this moment? What's one thing I can control today? What's one action I can take that supports my peace, not my panic? This is not spiritual bypassing. It's nervous system leadership. Because the mind follows where the body leads. And when you make your body a safe place, your thoughts stop racing to danger. They start returning to presence. And presence, that's where clarity lies. Remember, you don't overcome anxiety by erasing it. You overcome it by no longer obeying it. By practicing small acts of sovereignty. By staying rooted in the real. By reminding yourself, this feeling is not a command. It's a cue. And I get to choose my response. That choice, repeated daily, becomes a new pattern. That pattern becomes a new lens. That lens becomes a new identity. Not one free of all fear, but one no longer defined by it. Your mind is not your enemy, it just needs a leader. It's easy to blame the mind. When thoughts spiral, when fear takes over, when you wake up in the middle of the night rehearsing disasters that haven't even happened. It feels like your brain is betraying you, like your own mind is working against you. But here's a truth that will change everything. Your mind is not your enemy. It's just entrained. And what isn't trained tries to survive. The mind is a pattern-minded seeker. It wants to protect you. It learned it early from pain, from trauma, from chaos that anticipating danger might keep you safe. So it scans. It analyzes. It replays. It doesn't mean to hurt you. It's trying to help. But what helped you survive isn't always what helps you thrive. And unless you consciously let your mind, it will default to fear. Because fear is efficient. Fear doesn't need logic. Fear doesn't need evidence. Fear just needs an opening. And most people give it that opening every morning by waking up and checking their phone before checking their mind. Your mind is a tool, not a truth. Let's get something clear. Not every thought is true. Not every worry is wise. Not every mental loop deserves your attention. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes your thoughts and chooses what to do next. That's the Stoic difference. Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress thought. It teaches you to direct thought, like a charioteer guiding a powerful horse. You don't fear the horse. You train it. You give it reins. You build trust. You lead. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. He didn't say control the world. He said control your response to it. And that control, it begins in the way you speak to yourself when fear rises. Your internal dialogue shapes your external experience. Most people speak to themselves in a tone they would never use with a friend. cruel, doubtful, unforgiving. You're such a mess. Why are you still like this? You'll never get it together. But imagine if Marcus spoke that way to himself. If Seneca berated himself every time he stumbled. If Epictetus, born into slavery, believed he was destined to stay small. They didn't. Because they knew. Self-minded leadership begins with inner language. So when the mind spirals, you don't attack it. You redirect it. You say, "Thank you, mind. I see you're trying to protect me. But right now, we're not in danger, we're in a story. Let's come back to what's real." You speak with firmness, not fear. With guidance, not guilt. A Stoic doesn't shame the mind. They strengthen it. Through repetition. Through discipline. Through choosing clarity over chaos again and again. Because the mind is a student. And every time you bring it back to breath, to truth, to action, you teach it something new. I am the one in charge here. That is sovereignty. And it's built in small, daily practices. Let's get tactical. Try this. Each morning, before the world grabs your attention, ask 3 questions. What do I control today? What is worth my energy? How can I lead my thoughts instead of obey them? Write the answers down. Not perfectly, just honestly. Because clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from thinking on purpose. That's what Stoicism gives you. Not certainty, but control over where your mind goes when certainty is impossible. If you don't program your mind, the world will. And the world? It runs on urgency, on fear, on comparison. So don't outsource your thinking. Don't let headlines decide your mood. Don't let other people's expectations rent space in your brain. Curate your inputs. Slow your consumption. Choose your mental diet like you choose what to feed your body. Because what you consume, you become. And a clear mind is not a lucky mind. It's a protected one. Your mind is not broken. It's just full. And full minds need boundaries. Not everything deserves a response. Not every thought deserves analysis. Some things just need to be released. Like an exhale. You don't need to solve every fear. You don't need to prove every doubt wrong. You just need to say, "This thought doesn't serve me. I'm letting it go." That's not denial. That's direction. And the more you practice directing your mind, the more you feel it shift. From scattered to still. From reactive to reflective. From anxious to aligned. That shift, it doesn't happen in a breakthrough. It happens in a breath. You don't need a new mind. You need a new relationship with the one you have. You need to stop seeing it as a problem to fix and start treating it as a power to guide. With patience. With repetition. With compassion. Because your mind, it's not here to sabotage you. It's here to serve you. But only if you show up every day as its leader. And when you do, when you train it to pause, to focus, to listen, to come back, you stop surviving your thoughts. You start shaping your life. Fear and the false self detaching from the identity you built in panic. You weren't born afraid. You weren't born doubting your voice. You weren't born shrinking in rooms. You weren't born waking up anxious, tiptoeing through life as if any wrong move would collapse it all. That version of you, the anxious one, the one always bracing for impact, that version was built. Built from experience. Built from conditioning. Built from a world that oft unpunished your presence more than it praised your truth. But the Stoics knew something essential. We suffer most when we mistake a temporary survival identity for our permanent self. Let that settle. Because chances are, you built masks over time, masks shaped by fear. The high achiever who's afraid of being forgotten. The perfectionist who's afraid of being rejected. The peacemaker who's afraid of being abandoned. You didn't choose these masks out of vanity. You chose them out of protection. And at one point, they worked. They got you approval. They avoided conflict. They earned you love or something that looked like it. But now, they keep you locked in cycles of anxiety and self-minus betrayal. Because they're not you. They are who you thought you had to become to feel safe. But safety built on fear is not security. It's a prison. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." If you keep thinking like a frightened version of yourself, you'll start becoming that version even if it no longer fits. So the work now is to ask, who did I become in response to fear, and am I ready to let them go? Let me ask you some deeper questions. Who did you have to become to survive your childhood? What did you silence in yourself to be accepted? What strengths did you bury to avoid standing out? These are not questions of judgment. They're invitations to heal. Because healing doesn't just mean feeling better. It means reclaiming what fear made you give up. It means realizing that the version of you always scanning for danger, always second minus guessing, always saying yes to avoid conflict, that version served a purpose once. But it's not your destiny. You're not your fear minus built self. You're the one who gets to decide who walks forward. And that choice begins with awareness. Start noticing when fear drives your actions. Ask, am I doing this out of alignment or anxiety? If I weren't afraid of being judged, what would I say right now? If I trusted myself fully, how would I act differently today? These questions begin to separate you from the mask. They reveal what's beneath the panic. And what's beneath it? Power. Not aggressive power. Calm, clear, centered power. The kind of power that doesn't need to be proven because it's practiced. Fear builds a false self to keep you safe. Stoicism builds a true self to help you grow. And the true self? It doesn't panic under pressure. It pauses. It doesn't shrink from rejection. It remembers their opinion is not my identity. It doesn't spiral when things go wrong. It reflects. It adjusts. It remains. Because the true self is not based on performance. It's based on principle. And principle doesn't panic. You are not your defense mechanisms. You are what remains when they are no longer needed. Let's go deeper. There's a part of you that's afraid to heal. Why? Because healing means losing the old identity. The overthinker. The pleaser. The one who's always anxious. And letting go of those roles, it's scary because they become familiar. Even comforting in a strange way. But you have to ask, do I want to stay familiar or do I want to become free? Because you can't be both. Freedom means choosing alignment over autopilot. It means letting go of stories that begin with, I've always been this way. That's just how I am. It's never worked before, so why try? Those aren't truths. They're scripts. And Stoicism invites you to revise the script not with fantasy, but with discipline. Not with hype, but with habit. Identity isn't fixed. It's forged. Through action. Through attention. Through the daily decision to act like the person you want to become, even if it feels unfamiliar at first. And slowly, the fear minus built self dissolves. Not in one dramatic moment, but in subtle, sacred ways. A boundary you hold without guilt. A truth you speak, even if your voice shakes. A decision you make without asking for permission. That's not ego. That's emergence. The Stoic life is about subtracting everything that's not you until what remains is real. So let's return to the question. Who did fear make me become, and who am I ready to be now? Be honest. Write it down. Speak it aloud. Name the old roles. Thank them. Release them. Then ask, what would the truer version of me do next? What decisions align with courage, not conditioning? What does peace feel like, and how can I live from there? That's your practice now. Daily. Deliberate. Unapologetic. And as you do this work, not for applause, but for alignment, you'll realize something powerful. You were never broken. You were just buried beneath the noise of fear. And now, you're remembering. You're returning. You're rebuilding. Not a new self, but the true self that fear tried to hide. And that self, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be present and willing to lead. The illusion of control and how surrender sets you free. We're taught from a young age that control is power. Control your grades. Control your schedule. Control how you look, how you sound, how others see you. And underneath all of that, a deeper, unspoken belief. If I can control everything, I won't get hurt. So you plan. You prepare. You predict. You rehearse every worst minus case scenario so nothing surprises you. You micromanage relationships outcomes, even your own emotions, trying to outrun the chaos of life. But chaos comes anyway, and it doesn't ask permission. It crashes through your carefulness, tears up your timeline, shatters your illusion of safety. And in that moment when control fails, you either collapse or you wake up. Because what the Stoics knew, and what modern life often hides, is this: control is not freedom. Surrender is. Let that land. Not passive surrender. Not resignation. But conscious surrender, the kind that sees clearly what belongs to you and what doesn't. The kind that Marcus Aurelius practiced when he said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." In those 17 words lies the Stoic secret to peace. Separate what you can influence from what you cannot. Then give your energy only to the first. Most of your anxiety comes from trying to control what was never yours. Think about that. You try to control how people feel about you. You try to control whether they stay. You try to control how fast things unfold, how smooth the path is, how quickly you heal. And when life doesn't obey, you feel panic. Not because you're weak, but because you invested your identity into something inherently unstable. So the Stoic asks, is this within my control? Have I done my part? Can I accept the rest without resentment? And that final question, that's where the shift happens. Because surrender is not defeat. It's clarity. It's saying, I will give my best and let go of the rest. I will act with integrity and release the outcome. I will walk forward, even if the path curves in ways I didn't plan. That's not giving up. That's growing up. It's realizing that you can trust a life into perfection, but you can show up each day with presence and principle. And that, the Stoics taught, is true power. Seneca said, we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. What is imagination doing when you're trying to control everything? It's rehearsing, projecting, anticipating failure so you can prevent it. But prevention is not presence. And the more you try to preempt pain, the more you miss the moment you're actually in. And the moment you're in, that's where your life is happening. Let's go deeper. What are you holding too tightly right now? Ask yourself honestly. What outcome am I trying to force? What relationship am I micromanaging? What future am I obsessively rehearsing? Now ask, have I done my part? Is this within my control? If not, can I release it? Not abandon it. Just stop carrying what isn't yours. Just stop gripping what's already gone. Just stop arguing with the wind. Because life is not a machine. It's a river. And you don't control a river by building a dam. You navigate it by strengthening your presence, your paddle, your direction. That's the Stoic posture. Rooted, not rigid. Focused, not forceful. Surrendered, not scattered. Control drains you. Surrender returns your energy. When you try to control people, you lose trust. When you try to control timing, you lose patience. When you try to control healing, you lose gentleness with yourself. But when you surrender, you accept people as they are, focused on how you respond. You accept the season and maximize what it offers. You accept that healing takes time and you meet yourself with grace. This doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you start caring wisely. You invest energy where it counts. Your mind, your actions, your character. And you stop leaking energy on things that resist your grasp. Like someone else's approval. Like how long it's taking. Like what could have been. Here's the truth that cuts deep. Letting go of control is not a loss. It's a return. A return to presence. A return to clarity. A return to the version of you who no longer needs certainty to walk forward. Because certainty is not a requirement for peace. It's a myth that keeps you stuck. Peace is available now. When you stop clenching. when you breathe deeper, when you say, I trust myself to handle whatever comes when it comes. And until then, you live, you show up, you do the next right thing, not for guarantees, but for alignment. Because alignment builds confidence, and confidence builds calm. This is the paradox. You gain control the moment you stop needing it. So here's your invitation today. Let go. Not as a last resort, but as a first step. Let go of timelines. Let go of rules that no longer fit. Let go of old versions of you who were built only to survive. Because now, you're ready to do more than survive. You're ready to live. And that life, it starts when you stop trying to grip it and start learning to flow with it. Not recklessly, but consciously. Like a stoic on the water, calm, grounded, and fully present in every stroke. Training calm into the body, the physical practice of emotional resilience. You already know that fear isn't just in the mind. It lives in the body. Tight shoulders, shallow breath, a clenched jaw, a racing heart at the smallest trigger. Sometimes before your thoughts even catch up, your body is already bracing for battle. But here's what most people don't realize. You don't just think your way into anxiety. You hold it. You rehearse it. You practice it daily, often unconsciously, in your posture, in your breath, in your habits. And if you want to reclaim calm, you have to practice calm with your body. Because emotional resilience isn't just a mindset. It's a physiological skill. And the Stoics knew this long before neuroscience got up. They didn't meditate on mountaintops or preach empty platitudes. They trained. Every day. They trained in discipline. They trained in breath. They trained in hardship, not because they enjoyed pain, but because they understood this. The body remembers what the mind forgets. And the body obeys what it's trained to expect. So if you've trained your body to expect danger, tension, and panic, you can train it to expect calm, control, and presence. Let's break this down. Your nervous system is your foundation. It's not your thoughts that control your emotions. It's your nervous system. When your nervous system is dysregulated, hypervigilant, overstimulated, stuck in fight minus or minus flight, no amount of positive thinking will bring you peace. Because your biology is already screaming. Something's wrong. And that's not your fault. It's adaptation. It's survival. But what kept you safe then is not what keeps you steady now. The Stoic doesn't ignore the body. They build a relationship with it. They breathe intentionally. They ground themselves in movement. They train posture, rhythm, and physical stillness, not just for strength, but for command. Because a strong body teaches the mind. I'm safe. I'm here. I can handle this. Calm isn't something you wait for. It's something you condition. That starts with the breath. Slow, deep, rhythmic. The Stoics may not have used the word vagus nerve, but they knew what science now proves. Deep, intentional breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the body's natural brake pedal. Try this now. Inhale through your nose for 4 seconds. Hold for 2. Exhale through your mouth for 6. Pause for 2. Repeat. Do that for 2 minutes. Notice what shifts. Your thoughts didn't change, but your internal state did. That's the doorway to resilience. Because now, you're no longer reacting from panic, you're responding from presence. Stillness is not passive. It's a position of power. Picture a warrior before battle. Are they frantic? Flailing? No. They're still. Centered. Because stillness is readiness. It's energy coiled, not scattered. That's what daily practice gives you. The ability to stay composed, not because you never feel fear, but because you've trained your body to return faster. That's real power. Not avoidance. Recovery. Movement is medicine. But not just any movement, intentional movement. When your body is anxious, it wants to flee or fight. Give it a third option: flow. A walk in silence. Stretching while breathing. Lifting weight with controlled rhythm. These are not just workouts. They're rituals of regulation. You're not just building muscle. You're sending signals to your nervous system. I am not in danger. I am here. I am strong. That signal, repeated daily, becomes your baseline. And baseline is everything. Most people live at a 7 out of 10 intention without realizing it. Always on edge. Always slightly braced. Always ready for something to go wrong. That becomes their normal. So when something small happens, a delay, a disagreement, a disappointment, they spike. Not because it's catastrophic, but because they were already on the edge. The Stoic trains not to live at 7, but to stay at 3 even when the world tries to push them to 10. That's the work. And it's done in the morning, in silence, in movement, in attention to the body, not as an aesthetic project, but as a vessel of resilience. Posture is philosophy. How you use it, how you stand, how you move through space. It reflects what you believe about yourself. Slumped shoulders say, I'm shrinking. Tense hands say, I'm not safe. Rapid steps say, I'm running. But what if you walked like a Stoic? Slow, tall, controlled. Not because you're performing, because you're embodying clarity. That's what Epictetus meant when he said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. That includes how you move. Because identity is not just in what you say, it's in what you repeat with your body. Here's the key. Your nervous system won't believe anything your body contradicts. So if you say, I'm safe, I'm calm, I've got this, but your body is tense, shallow minus breathing, restless, it won't land. But when the words in the body align, that's integration. That's where change happens. Not in theory, in embodiment. So what does Stoic physical practice look like? It's simple, daily, sacred. A 10-minute walk in stillness before screens. Breath work when tension spikes. Journaling how your body feels, not just what you think. Grounding habits before important decisions. Protecting rest like it's part of your philosophy, not a luxury. These aren't hacks. They're anchors. Because life will test you. Chaos will knock. Fear will rise. But your body? Your body can become a place that doesn't flinch anymore. Remember, calm isn't a mood. It's a skill. And your body is your first dojo. Train it. Respect it. Lead it with consistency. And it will follow. Because fear lives in tension. But freedom? Freedom lives in a body that's been taught how to return. Redefining strength, the courage to stay soft while life gets hard. When the world talks about strength, it usually shows you something cold. Unshaken. Unbothered. Unemotional. They call it toughness. They dress it in armor. They teach you to hide your pain, swallow your tears, stay sharp at all costs. But that's not strength. That's numbness. And numbness is not Stoic. Because real Stoic strength, it's not the absence of feeling. It's the presence of courage within the feeling. The courage to stay soft in a hard world. The courage to remain open when life tries to shut you down. To stay present when the easy path is to escape. To feel deeply but act wisely. That's not weakness. That's mastery. Seneca said, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." And what is adversity if not the invitation to stay whole in the face of pressure? To feel fully without being ruled by the feeling. To love without needing control. To grieve without losing your grip. To care without collapsing. That's the Stoic's art. And it starts with unlearning what you've been told about emotion. Your softness is not your liability. It's your superpower. The part of you that notices, that feels, that empathizes, yes. That's not the problem. That's the access point to presence. Because when you're numb, you're not strong, you're absent. You're out of reach from others, and more dangerously from yourself. So Stoicism doesn't ask you to suppress. It asks you to refine. To take the raw material of emotion and forge it into clarity. That doesn't mean overanalyzing every feeling. It means honoring the emotion without giving it the steering wheel. Like a rider calming a wild horse. You don't shoot it. You steady it. You train it. And over time, that emotional energy becomes wisdom. Let's be real. Life will make you want to harden. It will betray you. It will shake you. People will disappoint you. Doors will close. Your best won't always be enough for the outcome you wanted. And when that happens, your reflex will be to close, to armor up, to say, fine, I don't care anymore. But the Stoic voice says something different. It says, stay open. Not to be naive, but to remain true. Because when you harden, you don't just block pain. You block joy. You block connection. You block possibility. You survive, but you stop living. Strength is not resistance. Strength is receptivity without collapse. It's saying, I can hold this moment even if it hurts. It's not pretending to be okay. It's not waiting to be rescued. It's standing inside the storm with your eyes open, saying, this is hard, and I'm still here. Breathing, leading, choosing what's next. That's courage. And that courage only lies in people who be trained to feel without falling apart. Softness isn't a lack of strength. It's a sign that strength no longer needs to scream. Think about the most powerful people you've met. Were they loud? No. They were composed, calm, present. They didn't need to dominate the room because they carried a quiet that made others pay attention. And that quiet, it doesn't come from force. It comes from internal coherence. A soul that's not at war with itself. A person who can sit with pain without panic. A leader who can listen fully before responding. A human who doesn't run from feeling but walks with it like an old friend. That's Stoic softness. Not fragile. Foundational. The hardest thing in the world is to stay kind when you're tired. To stay clear when you're hurting. To stay honest when you could manipulate. And that's why few people do it. Because emotional strength is not about having thick skin. It's about having deep roots. And roots are grown in reflection, in slowing down, in asking, what's this emotion trying to teach me? What's the story beneath the feeling? How can I move with truth, not just reaction? Let me ask you something hard but necessary. When did you learn that feeling made you unsafe? Was it when someone laughed at your tears? When being vulnerable meant being abandoned? When softness was met with punishment? Whatever it was, you adapted. You built shields. You told yourself, I'm fine. I don't need anyone. I'm better alone. And maybe that helped for a season. But no, now you want something more. Not just control, but connection. Not just composure, but truth. That means learning to take the armor off piece by piece. Not to be exposed, to be real. The Stoic doesn't avoid pain. They face it with poise. They write it down. They breathe through it. They speak it when it needs to be spoken. And when the wave passes, they're still standing. Not because they numbed, because they allowed. And in the allowing, they alchemized. Fear into focus. Grief into gratitude. Anger into boundary. Emotion into direction. That's emotional intelligence. And it's trained. You're not here to be invincible. You're here to be fully alive. Alive means pain. Alive means joy. Alive means all of it without letting any of it steal your power. So if you cry, let it be sacred. If you fall, let it be part of your rhythm. If you love, let it be without control. That's the Stoic version of strength. Not in resistance. In resonance. Not in silence. In honest presence. Here's your invitation. Don't just train your mind. Train your heart. Let it feel. Let it stay open even when it aches. Because when you do, you won't just survive life storms. You'll become a shelter for yourself and for others. Not because you're shaken, but because you learned the most powerful Stoic paradox. You can be soft and unbreakable, You can feel deeply and lead wisely. You can be calm and still be strong. When the noise won't stop reclaiming mental silence in a loud world. There's a kind of noise that never makes a sound. It doesn't come from traffic, notifications, or crowded rooms. It comes from inside you. Mental chatter. Constant analysis. Replays of what you said. Previews of what might go wrong. The loop. That endless loop where peace seems like a distant memory and stillness feels like a luxury only other people have time for. But here's the truth. Silence is not a condition you wait for. It's a practice you return to, especially in a world addicted to volume. Because the Stoic doesn't wait for the noise to stop. They train their mind to stand still even when the world keeps spinning. Mental silence isn't emptiness. It's alignment. It's not the absence of thought, it's the presence of order. The ability to notice a thought without needing to follow it. To hear the worry without becoming it. To observe the fear and still say, not today. That's not detachment. That's command. A kind of inner leadership that doesn't need to shout. Because it's grounded. And grounding doesn't happen when life slows down. It happens when you slow down inside of it. Marcus Aurelius wrote in a time of chaos. War. Plague. Political unrest. Constant danger. And yet he wrote, people try to get away from it all to the country, to the beach, to the mountains. You can get away from it anytime you like. By going within. That's not poetry. That's practice. Because Marcus understood. If peace can't be found in you, it can't be found anywhere. Not sustainably. Not truly. Let's talk about the loop. The loop is that cycle where your mind keeps spinning trying to solve what isn't even happening yet. You try to think your way into certainty, into safety, into feeling ready. But the more you think, the less clear you feel. Because overthinking is not clarity. It's control in disguise. You don't need more thoughts. You need space between the thoughts. That's what silence offers, not as an escape, but as a reset. But how do you create silence when the mind won't stop? You start by not fighting the noise. You observe it. You say, I see you. That worry. That doubt. That argument you keep replaying. I see you. Then you pause. You breathe. You ask, is this thought helpful or habitual? Am I solving something or just cycling through emotion? What would silence say right now? That space between noticing and reacting? That's where your peace lies. Most people live externally stimulated but internally malnourished. Their minds are full, but their souls are starving. Because content isn't wisdom. Stimulation isn't reflection. Consumption isn't clarity. You can scroll for hours and still not know what you feel. Still not remember what matters. Still not hear your own inner voice. Because that voice, it's not loud. It whispers. And you can only hear it when you create quiet. Silence is a form of resistance in a world built on noise. You're told to hustle, to stay plugged in, to be reachable, to stay updated. But the Stoic life says, no, I will be unreachable for a while because I'm reaching inward. That's not weakness. That's sovereignty. That's saying, I don't need more opinions, I need my own insight. I don't need another input, I need to digest what I've already taken in. I don't need more content, I need more consciousness. Silence is where the mind stops performing. You stop solving. Stop explaining. Stop defending. You let go of the character you play and sit with who you are when no one is watching. That stillness? It's not boring. It's revelatory. Because in silence, you don't lose yourself. You find the part of you that's been buried beneath the noise. And that part? It's always been wise. Always been clear. It's just been crowded out. Mental noise is a symptom of disconnection. From the body. From the breath. From truth. So when the noise rises, return to its real. The feeling of your feet on the floor. The rhythm of your breathing. The simplicity of the present moment. Because noise lives in the future or past. Silence lives now. And now is the only place peace can grow. Try this practice. Set a timer for 10 minutes. No music. No phone. No fixing. Sit. And breathe. Let the thoughts come, but don't chase them. Every time your mind wanders, gently say, here. Bring it back. To breath. To body. To presence. Do this daily. Not to empty the mind, but to teach it how to rest. Because even a racing horse needs to know when to stop. The Stoic doesn't fear the noise. They just don't feed it. They know. Every scroll is a vote for distraction. Every reactive thought is a drain of energy. Every moment of silence is a moment of power reclaimed. So, they protect the morning. They defend the evening. They create gaps in the day not to be productive, but to stay present. Because presence isn't the reward. It's the path. Here's your reminder. You don't need to silence the world. You just need to stop outsourcing your peace to it. You can be in a loud place and still be quiet inside. You can be surrounded by chaos and still be centered in breath. You can be overwhelmed and still choose to pause before proceeding. Because silence isn't the absence of sound. It's the presence of you. Fully. Unapologetically. Unshaken. Not ready, but responsible, taking aligned action through uncertainty. Let's be honest. Most people are waiting. Waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting to feel ready. Waiting for fear to leave, for doubt to disappear, for the path to glow with certainty. But here's what the Stoics knew and what the world often forgets. You don't need to feel ready to begin. You just need to feel responsible for your next step. Because readiness is a myth. There is no perfect moment. There is only this moment, your willingness to meet it or delay it. And the cost of waiting? It's not just lost time. It's lost confidence, lost clarity, lost alignment. Because every time you avoid the step, you reinforce the story. I can't move until I'm certain. And that story? That's the cage. Seneca said, delay is the greatest waste of life. It snatches away each day as it comes, and denies us the present by promising the future. That's what waiting does. It promises later, but delivers nothing. In the Stoic way, it's not about charging forward recklessly. It's about acting in alignment even when certainty is not guaranteed. Action is not about being fearless. It's about being faithful to your principles. You don't wait to act until anxiety leaves. You act in spite of it. You breathe. You center. You say, this is uncomfortable, but it's mine to do. That's not rushing. That's responsibility. And responsibility doesn't mean over-minus functioning for everyone else. It means owning your role in your own growth. No one is coming to drag you into alignment. That's your job. That's your power. Most people overthink to avoid the discomfort of decision. They study. They scroll. They plan. They prepare. But deep down, they're afraid to move. Not because they don't know what to do, but because doing it will require them to become someone new. And that version, it's unfamiliar. So they delay. But the Stoic doesn't avoid discomfort. They practice moving with it. Let me give you a reframe. You're not behind. You're just waiting for permission that already belongs to you. And once you realize that, everything shifts. You stop asking, am I ready? You start asking, what does integrity require right now? Because action from ego says, I need to be perfect. Action from alignment says, I need to be honest. Honest about what you want. Honest about what you feel. Honest about what your next brave step actually is. And then, you take it. Even if your hands shake. Even if your voice trembles. Even if no one claps. Because the clapping isn't the point. The becoming is. Courage isn't a feeling. It's a direction. You don't have to feel like a leader to lead. You don't have to feel confident to begin. You don't have to feel ready to rise. You just need to move while afraid without letting fear set the pace. That's not recklessness. That's sovereignty. Because fear doesn't go away. You just stop giving it the wheel. Here's the deeper truth. You already know what to do. You're just afraid of what it might cost. Maybe it's a relationship. Maybe it's your comfort. Maybe it's the identity you've worn for years. But here's the paradox. Not acting costs more. It costs your inner peace, your alignment, your ability to look in the mirror and say, I did what was mine to do. So the Stoic chooses the discomfort of growth over the comfort of stagnation. Not because it's easy, because it's right. Marcus Aurelius wrote, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Don't talk about clarity. Be clear. Don't wait to be understood. Be aligned. Don't wait for certainty. Be present. Because life won't pause for you to catch up. It will keep asking. Will you act, even when afraid? Will you speak, even when your voice shakes? Will you stay true, even when the outcome is unclear? The goal isn't to eliminate uncertainty. It's to stop needing it to act. Because when your principles are clear, when your compass is internal, when your peace is self-minus generated, you don't need perfect conditions. You move with conviction. And conviction is what makes you magnetic, not certainty. Because people don't trust those who have all the answers. They trust those who move with consistency even when the answers aren't all there yet. You want clarity? Move. Because action creates feedback. And feedback is clarity. But waiting? Waiting only creates more thought, more fear, more questions. So today, ask, what decision have I delayed? What story have I used to justify the delay? Or one small action could I take today to honor what I know? Then take it. Not because you feel fully prepared, but because you've decided to be available to grow. The Stoic path is not about having the whole map. It's about walking with enough light for the next step. You breathe. You listen. You move. Step by step. And with every step, readiness becomes irrelevant. Because you are no longer waiting. You are becoming. What if it all falls apart? Rebuilding from the ground of self-minus trust. Let's ask the question no one wants to say out loud. What if it all collapses? What if the relationship ends? What if the business fails? What if the future you were building disappears overnight? Not just the inconvenience, the full unraveling. The kind of loss that forces you to start again not from page one, but from a blank page. Most people don't ask this question. They bury it. Because they believe even thinking about collapse makes them weak or disloyal to their hope. But the Stoics, they ask this question daily. And not to become cynical, to become ready, to become clear about what can be taken and what can never be. Marcus Aurelius practiced this mental rehearsal daily. He would imagine loss not to attract it, but to prepare his character. He would say to himself, you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. This was morbid. It was mobilizing. Because when you face the worst and realize your worth doesn't die with it, you become free. Free from fear. Free from attachment. Free from the illusion that your identity is built on what you own, achieve, or appear to be. So ask yourself, honestly, if it all fell apart, who would you still be? Would you crumble with the job title? With the partner? With the reputation? With the perfect plan? Or would you find, buried under the rubble, something unshakable? Something not built in applause. Something built in character. Because that's the only thing life can't take. Who you become when everything else disappears. Self-minus trust isn't built when things go well. It's forged when things fall apart and you realize you're still standing. Even if you're crying. Even if you're crawling. Even if you're uncertain. But still standing. Still breathing. Still willing to take one more step. That's not weakness. That's inner infrastructure. Collapse is not the end. It's an invitation to rebuild differently this time. Most people rebuild trying to recreate what they lost. Same structure. Same identity. Same external attachments. But the Stoic rebuilds with new materials. integrity instead of image, practice instead of performance, presence instead of perfection. They don't ask, how do I get back to where I was? They ask, what kind of person must I become to walk forward with wisdom? That question alone changes everything. Collapse is a great clarifier. It reveals what was never stable. The relationship you had to chase to keep alive. The job that was slowly killing your spirit. The habits that numbed but never healed. And when they're gone, you don't just lose. You see what you clung to. You see what you avoided. You see who you had to become just to hold it all together. And now that it's gone, you can breathe. Not because it's easy, but because now it's real. The world teaches you to fear falling. The Stoic teaches you to rise wiser every time. You don't rebuild because things are perfect again. You rebuild because something in you refuses to stay down. That something? It's called self minus trust. It says, I've been here before. I've survived worse. I can carry myself out. That trust isn't loud. It's quiet, private, earned. And it lies in people who stopped outsourcing safety and started building it from within. Let me ask you a different kind of question. What part of you needs to fall apart? What rug? What identity? What expectation? What pressure? Sometimes the collapse isn't failure. It's freedom. It's your system saying, this can't go on like this. This version of you can't carry the next chapter. And it won't stop until you listen. Not with panic. With presence. The Stoic doesn't fight the fall. They work with it. They feel it fully. They grieve with depth. But they don't stay in the rubble. They begin again. Differently. Deliberately. They ask, what values survive the collapse? What must I rebuild? Not because I'm desperate, but because it aligns. What will I never carry again? And then they rise. Not with revenge, with refinement. Collapse is not the end of your story. It's the end of the illusion. That you had control. That you were what others thought. That your peace came from circumstances. Now you know better. And knowing better? That's your power. Because once you stop needing life to cooperate in order to feel clear, you become unshakable. Rebuilding begins with one question. What does peace look like now? Not success. Not validation. Peace. Start there. Build from there. Even if it's slow. Even if no one sees it. Even if you have to start in silence. Because silence is sacred. And peace is not what you wait for. Peace is what you build from the ground of self minus trust. Less, but better, the discipline of letting life be simple again. You don't need more. You need less but better. That's not minimalism as a trend. That's clarity as a lifestyle. That's Stoicism. Live, not just read. Because somewhere along the way, you were taught that a full life is a busy life. That if you're not always chasing, always building, always moving, you're falling behind. So, you add more goals, more projects, more commitments, more noise. And what happens? Your soul gets crowded. Your energy gets fragmented. You end the day feeling full in schedule, but empty in spirit. That's not abundance. That's overwhelmed, dressed in productivity. And the Stoic sees this for what it is. The disease of excess. And the cure of subtraction. Epictetus said, if you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Why? Because the world will not understand your simplicity. It will call it laziness. It will call it selfishness. It will not understand why you say no more than yes. Why you guard your calendar. Why you don't explain every boundary. But you're not here to be understood. You're here to be whole. And wholeness requires space. Let's get brutally honest. Most of what you do every day doesn't matter. Not really. It fills time. It fills silence. It gives the illusion of progress. But if you zoom out, if you measure your life not by what you did, but by what moved you closer to alignment, you'll see much can be removed. in what remains. That's where your peace is hiding. Not in another goal. In the courage to simplify. Simplicity is not poverty. It's precision. It's the decision to live a focused life, not a scattered one. To build deep, not wide. To trade status for stillness. To stop trying to be everything for everyone and start being someone real for yourself. That's not retreat. That's refinement. And refinement is the Stoic's path. The discipline of less starts in your mind. Fewer stories. Fewer assumptions. Fewer mental tabs open at once. You begin to ask, do I need to think about this right now? Is this thought helping me act with clarity or keeping me busy in confusion? What if I just let this go? Let it go. The resentment, the prediction, the worry. Because if it's not aligned with where you're going, it's a detour. And detours cost energy. Simplify your digital world. Unsubscribe. Delete. Silence. Protect. Not to disconnect from life, but to reconnect with what matters. You don't need 50 voices in your feed telling you how to live. You need one voice. Your own, uncluttered. And that voice only rises in silence. Not in scrolls. Not in updates. Not in constant comparison. Simplicity means choosing signal over noise again and again. Simplify your routines. Ask, what truly nourishes me? What rituals bring me back to myself? What am I doing just because I always have? Stop automating habits that no longer serve you. Stop collecting productivity tools when your real tool is presence. Return to breath, to water, to movement, to writing things down. Not for performance, for peace. Simplify your relationships. Not by cutting people off to feel powerful, but by asking, does this connection require performance? Can I be fully honest in this space? Does this person reflect the version of me I want to become? And if not, love them, but release the need to stay entangled. You don't need 100 people around you. You need a few who keep you honest. Because alignment is oxygen. And anything that chokes it, no matter how familiar, must be let go with grace. Simplicity is the natural result of clarity. The clearer you are on who you are, what you value, and where you're going, the less tolerance you have for noise. You don't become harsh. You become intentional. And intention feels like freedom. The world wants to convince you that more equals meaning. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. Meaning is found in what you're willing to let go of. When you stop chasing attention. When you stop explaining yourself. When you stop proving your worth. You remember. You were never lacking. You were just buried under too much. Too many plans. Too many voices. Too many identities layered over your essence. And once you strip it all away, you arrive not at emptiness, but at truth. Here's your practice. Remove one obligation that no longer aligns. Create one block of silence daily. Say one honest no this week. Choose one ritual to do deeply instead of 10 things half-minus present. Simplicity is not about deprivation. It's about devotion. And devotion is how you return to what matters without apology. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." You don't need more time. You need less distraction. You don't need more from the world. You need less of what separates you from your soul. That's the Stoic path. Not faster, not louder, just truer. And that truth, it's light. It's clear. It's free of clutter. It's less but better. Peace is a practice, the Stoic way to endure, evolve, and live light. You didn't come this far just to feel slightly better. You came to remember something the world made you forget. That peace was never out there. It was never in success. Never in approval. Never in control. Peace was always an inner practice. A way of walking through life not untouched by chaos, but unshaken by it. Because you now understand, peace is not an outcome. It's a choice, a habit, a daily return. And the Stoics knew this. They weren't perfect. They didn't float above pain. They endured. They struggled. But they anchored themselves in principle, in presence, in practice. And that's what you're rebuilding now. Not a perfect life. A peaceful one. Peace doesn't mean nothing goes wrong. It means nothing can destroy your inner foundation. That foundation, it's made of small things. A breath before reacting. A pause before judging. A moment of stillness before replying. A no spoken without guilt. A morning protected without apology. None of this looks dramatic, but it adds up. Over time, those small moments become a rhythm. And that rhythm becomes your nervous system's new home. Seneca said, "As is a tale, so is life, not how long it is, but how good it is what matters." A good life isn't a loud life. It's not measured in likes, or wealth, or accolades. It's measured in inner experiences, in how deeply you can sit with yourself without needing distraction, in how often you choose what's right over what's easy, in how little of yourself you betray just to be liked. That's real peace. Not passive. Potent. Peace is not passive. It is fierce. It is earned. It is protected. Because the world will keep trying to pull you out of it. People will project. The past will echo. The future will threaten. And in those moments, you won't always feel centered. That's okay. Because peace isn't the absence of reaction. It's the recovery. It's how quickly you remember what's true. How fast you return to what matters. How often you refuse to give your power away to anything that doesn't live in your values. Peace is not comfort. It's clarity. And clarity doesn't mean you always know what's next. It means you know yourself enough to move with calm through the unknown. That's what Stoicism gives you. Not certainty, but serenity and uncertainty. Because now you walk through life with the belief, no matter what comes, I trust myself to meet it. And that trust, that's your peace. So what does a peaceful life actually look like? It looks like letting things go without a dramatic goodbye, choosing silence over defensiveness, being present with people but not responsible for their peace, releasing outcomes you used to grip with white-minus-knuckled fear, sitting in discomfort and calling it sacred, laughing at your mistakes and learning without shame. It looks like wisdom, worn like well-fitted clothes, not for performance, but because they become part of you. You don't have to keep fighting for peace. You just have to stop abandoning it. And you abandon it when you chase things that don't align. When you people-please. When you argue to be right. When you keep saying yes to avoid being misunderstood. But now you know better. You've practiced. You've walked this path. You've seen that every time you lose your peace, it's not because someone took it. It's because, for a moment, you handed it over. And now, you've learned to hold it differently. With softness. With reverence. With strength. Peace is the evidence that you become who you used to hope for. Not because you're perfect, but because you're present. Present with your breath, with your boundaries, with your grief, with your joy. Not running, not chasing, just being. And being is enough. Here's what peace sounds like. I don't need to prove anything today. I can begin again right now. This discomfort won't destroy me. It'd rather be misunderstood than misaligned. I trust the timing, even if I don't understand it. These are not affirmations. They're anchors. And they'll hold you steady through the seasons, through the storms, through the stretching of becoming. You didn't come here just to be strong. You came here to be at peace with yourself, with your past, with your limits, with the people who couldn't meet you, with the parts of you that are still unfolding. And most of all, with the journey, not just the arrival. Because peace isn't found at the finish line. It's found in how you walk. Step by step. Day by day. Breath by breath. That's the Stoic way. So as you close this final chapter, take this with you. You will forget. You will fall back into patterns. You will feel anxious again. But that doesn't mean you failed. It means you're still walking. And now, you have something new. A compass. A practice. A piece you know how to return to. So return. As often as needed. No guilt. Just grace. You're not behind. You're exactly where you're meant to be. Calmer. Clearer. And finally free. If this message reminded you of your strength, share it with someone who's ready to reclaim theirs. Let's live lighter together.